After receiving a large inheritance, Natalia decided to test her husband. She told him that her parents had lost their home and would be moving in with them the next day. But in the morning, she couldn't believe her eyes. Before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The first rays of dawn crept through the delicate lace curtains of Natalia and Eric Carter's two-story suburban home, painting the hardwood floors with soft, dappled light. The house, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac lined with maple trees, was a haven of routine and comfort, a testament to the 7 years of marriage that had shaped the couple's life. Eric, an accountant with a meticulous streak, spent his days in a downtown office, balancing ledgers with the precision of a watchmaker. Natalia, a freelance photographer, poured her soul into capturing fleeting moments, weddings, sunsets, the unguarded smiles of strangers. Her work a vibrant counterpoint to Eric's structured world. Their evenings often unfolded on the wraparound porch, glasses of Merlot in hand, the hum of crickets blending with their quiet conversations about the future. It was a good life, one they'd built together through small sacrifices and shared dreams. But beneath the surface, a subtle tremor of doubt had begun to stir in Natalia's heart, triggered by a phone call that arrived exactly 8 days ago on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The call had come from a lawyer representing her estranged uncle, Victor, a reclusive man she hadn't seen since she was 12. His death had been sudden, a heart attack in his secluded cabin upstate, and the news carried a weight Natalia hadn't expected. An inheritance of $2.7 million, a fortune that seemed almost absurd in its scale. The lawyer's voice had been clipped, professional, as he outlined the details. Bank accounts, investments, a small portfolio of properties. Natalia had listened in stunned silence, her mind racing with possibilities and pitfalls. She hadn't told Eric yet, not because she doubted his love, but because the magnitude of the money felt like a Pandora's box. She'd heard too many stories, friends whose marriages crumbled under sudden wealth, families fractured by greed, relationships eroded by hidden resentments. Eric was her anchor, the man who'd held her hand through job losses and late-night fears. But what if money revealed a side of him she'd never seen? What if it changed them? The question haunted her, creeping into her thoughts as she edited photos in her home office or lay awake beside Eric's sleeping form. It was in the small hours of the night, as moonlight spilled across the bedroom ceiling, that an idea took shape. A test, a way to probe the depths of Eric's character. She would tell him a lie, not a cruel one, but one designed to push him to his limits. She'd say her parents, who lived comfortably in a neighboring state, had lost everything in a financial catastrophe. Their house foreclosed, their savings wiped out. They'd need to move in with them, tomorrow. The scenario would demand sacrifice, patience, and a willingness to upend their carefully curated life. If Eric could handle that, she reasoned, he could handle the truth of the inheritance. If he couldn't, well, better to know now, before the money changed everything. That evening, as they sat at their oak dining table, the air thick with the aroma of roasted garlic and fresh basil from Natalia's homemade pasta, she set her plan in motion. She pushed her fork through her food, her fingers trembling slightly as she summoned the courage to speak. Eric, she began, her voice soft and deliberately fragile. I got a call from my mom today. It's bad news. My parents have lost everything. The bank foreclosed on their house. They have nowhere to go. She paused, her eyes locked on his, searching for any flicker of emotion. I told them they could move in with us. They're coming tomorrow. Eric froze, his fork hovering midair, a piece of rigatoni dangling precariously. His hazel eyes, usually warm and steady, widened for a moment, and a heavy silence settled over the table. Natalia's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a question. Would he be angry? Resentful? Would he push back or demand details? She braced herself, but Eric set his fork down with deliberate care, his expression settling into something unreadable, calm, but with a faint shadow of tension. Tomorrow? He repeated, his voice even, though there was a subtle crack in it, like a hairline fracture in glass. Okay, we'll make it work. Natalia nodded, forcing a small smile, but her mind was a storm of uncertainty. His response was too neutral, too measured. Was he hiding frustration, swallowing his true feelings to avoid a fight? Or was he genuinely willing to open their home to her parents, no questions asked? She couldn't tell, and that ambiguity gnawed at her, sharp and persistent. As they cleared the dishes in near silence, the clink of plates and the hum of the dishwasher filling the void where conversation should have been, Natalia felt the weight of her deception settle like a stone in her chest. Tomorrow, she'd see how he handled the reality of her parents' supposed arrival, or so he thought. The next morning, Natalia woke before the sun, her stomach twisting with a cocktail of anticipation, guilt, and nervous energy. She'd planned to confess the truth before 10 a.m., the time she'd told Eric her parents would arrive. But as she sipped her coffee in the kitchen, the rich, bitter aroma doing little to calm her fraying nerves, she noticed Eric was already up, moving through the house with an unusual urgency. He was in the guest room, stripping the bed of its decorative pillows and smoothing fresh linens with the precision of a man on a mission. We'll need to clear out the garage for their stuff, he called out, his voice brisk but not unkind. Do they have furniture, boxes? And maybe we should get an air mattress in case they need more space. Do you know how much they're bringing? Natalia's heart softened at his effort, but her curiosity deepened. Was this genuine care, a reflection of the man she'd married? Or was he putting on a performance, masking his true feelings to keep the peace? She decided to push the test further, to see how far his patience would stretch before it snapped. Leaning against the doorway, her arms crossed, she took a deep breath. Eric, she said, her voice steady but laced with hesitation. I didn't want to mention this last night, but they might need to stay for a while. Maybe a year, or longer. They're in a really bad spot. Eric paused, a stack of clean towels cradled in his arms. His jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment, Natalia saw something flicker in his eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or the weight of exhaustion. But then he smiled, a tight, strained smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We'll figure it out, Nat, he said, his voice softer now, almost resigned. They're family. We'll make it work. He turned back to his task, but his movements were slower, as if her words had draped a heavy cloak over his shoulders. As the morning wore on, Natalia's nerves frayed like an old rope. She watched Eric closely, cataloging every sigh, every glance at the clock, every subtle shift in his posture. By 9:45, he was pacing the living room, his phone in hand, occasionally peering out the front window at the empty street. "What time did you say they're getting here?" he asked, his tone casual but edged with a tension that prickled the air. "Any minute now," Natalia replied, her throat dry as sandpaper. She was on the verge of calling off the ruse, of confessing that it was all a test, when the doorbell rang, sharp and jarring, slicing through the quiet like a blade. Her heart stopped. Who could that be? She hadn't invited anyone. Eric's head snapped toward the door, and before Natalia could react, he strode over and yanked it open. Standing on the porch were two strangers, a middle-aged couple with weathered faces and nervous, hesitant smiles. The woman, her graying hair pulled into a loose bun, clutched a small, worn suitcase, its handle frayed from years of use. The man, broad-shouldered but stooped, held a cardboard box taped shut at the edges, its corners dented and soft. "Hi," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly, as if she were afraid of being turned away. We're here for Natalia?" Eric turned to Natalia, his brow furrowed in confusion, his hand still gripping the doorknob. "Nat? Are these your parents' friends or something?" Natalia's mind reeled, her thoughts scrambling like a flock of startled birds. I don't know them," she stammered, stepping forward, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Who are you?" The woman's smile faltered, and she exchanged a quick, anxious glance with the man beside her. "I'm Ellen," she said, her voice wavering. "This is my husband, Tom. We got a call last night. From you, we thought. You said you were Natalia, and that we could stay here because we lost our house. We've been driving all night to get here." Natalia's blood ran cold, a chill spreading from her chest to her fingertips. A call? From me? She hadn't called anyone. Her eyes darted to Eric, who looked as bewildered as she felt, his mouth slightly open as he processed the words. "There must be some mistake," Natalia said, her voice shaking, barely above a whisper. "I didn't call you." Ellen's face crumpled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Tom set the box down with a heavy thud, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had settled on them. "But the woman on the phone, she knew everything about us," he said, his voice gruff but laced with desperation. "Our address, our situation with the bank, the foreclosure. She said you were family, that you'd take us in." Eric stepped in, his accountant's instinct for order cutting through the chaos. "Let's sort this out," he said, his voice calm but firm, a lifeline in the spiraling confusion. "Come inside, have some coffee. We'll figure out what's going on." As the couple stepped into the house, their footsteps hesitant on the hard wood, Natalia's mind spun like a kaleidoscope, fragments of questions colliding. Someone had impersonated her, but who and why? Her test for Eric was unraveling, replaced by a mystery she hadn't anticipated, one that felt like a violation of their home, their lives. Over the next hour, as they sat around the kitchen table, Ellen and Tom poured out their story, their voices heavy with exhaustion and shame. They'd been struggling for months, drowning in debt after a series of bad investments in a failed restaurant venture. Their home, a modest ranch-style house they'd lived in for 20 years, had been foreclosed on just days ago, leaving them with nowhere to go. The call had come late the previous night, from a woman claiming to be Natalia, offering them a lifeline. The details were eerily specific, down to the name of their bank, the date of their eviction notice, even the model of their old pickup truck. It was too precise, too personal, to be a random prank. Eric listened intently, his pen scratching notes on a legal pad he'd grabbed from his office. He asked pointed questions. When was the call? What was the exact wording? Did the voice have an accent? His analytical mind already piecing together a puzzle. Natalia, meanwhile, felt a growing sense of dread, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Her lie about her parents had been meant to test Eric's loyalty, but now it seemed someone else was pulling strings, orchestrating a deception far beyond her own. She excused herself to the bathroom, her hands trembling as she splashed cold water on her face, her reflection in the mirror pale and wide-eyed. Who could have known about my plan? She wondered, her thoughts racing. She hadn't told a soul, not her parents, not her sister, not even her best friend, Lila. The inheritance was her only clue. Someone must have known about it, someone close enough to eavesdrop on her life, to mimic her voice, her mannerisms. But who? And what did they want? When she returned, Eric was on the phone with the police, his voice steady as he reported the incident as a possible scam. Ellen and Tom sat quietly, their coffee untouched, their faces etched with a mix of exhaustion and disappointment. Natalia's heart ached for them, two strangers caught in a web they hadn't spun, their hopes dashed by a cruel trick. But her mind was elsewhere, racing through possibilities. The inheritance. It was the only thing that made sense. Someone had learned of it and used it to manipulate her life, to send strangers to her door. But how had they known? Had she been careless, left a voicemail on speaker, mentioned it in passing at her studio? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. As the day unfolded, the mystery deepened, casting a shadow over their home. Eric took charge with a quiet determination that surprised Natalia, contacting a local shelter to help Ellen and Tom find temporary housing while the police investigated. He drove them to a nearby motel, paying for a week's stay out of his own pocket, and promised to follow up with any leads. His calm efficiency, his willingness to help two strangers despite the chaos, pierced Natalia's heart, and for the first time, she felt a sharp pang of guilt for doubting him. He wasn't just going through the motions, he was stepping up, not only for her, but for people he'd never met. Still, the question of the mysterious caller lingered, a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. That evening, after Ellen and Tom had left with weary thank yous and promises to repay them, Natalia knew she couldn't keep her secret any longer. She sat Eric down on the couch, the room dim except for the soft glow of a single lamp, and let the truth spill out like water from a cracked dam. Eric, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I lied to you. My parents are fine. They haven't lost their house. I made it up. I got an inheritance, a big one, $2.7 million from my uncle Victor. I didn't tell you because I wanted to test you, to see how you'd react if our life got complicated. I'm so sorry. She braced herself for anger, for the sting of betrayal to flash across his face, for the kind of argument that could leave scars. Instead, Eric laughed, a low, weary sound that caught her off guard, filling the room with an unexpected warmth. You thought you needed to test me? He said, shaking his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Nat, I've been with you through worse than your parents moving in. Job losses, that car accident, your dad's surgery 3 years ago. I'd do anything for you. You didn't need to lie to know that. Tears stung her eyes as she reached for his hand, her fingers trembling against his warm palm. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I needed to be sure. The money, it scared me. I've seen what it does to people. Eric squeezed her hand, his expression softening, his eyes searching hers. I get it, he said quietly. Money does weird things to people. It makes them doubt what they know. But you don't need to trick me to know who I am. He paused, then added with a playful glint in his eye, though I've got to admit, your test got a hell of a lot more complicated than you planned. Their moment of reconciliation was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door, jarring in the quiet of the evening. It was a police officer, a young woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, holding a printout of phone records. We traced the call to Ellen and Tom, she said, her tone matter-of-fact. It came from a burner phone, purchased 2 days ago at a gas station near your office, Mrs. Carter. We're pulling security footage, but it's a start. Natalia's stomach dropped, a cold wave washing over her. Her office? She worked from home most days, but her photography studio was downtown, a small shared space where she collaborated with other freelancers, a rotating cast of creatives who rented desks by the month. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt, sharp and electric. Someone she knew, someone close, had orchestrated this. But why? Was it about the money? Revenge? A twisted prank? The questions swirled, each one a needle pricking her thoughts. Over the next few days, Natalia and Eric became reluctant detectives, their partnership stronger than ever despite the strain of the mystery. They started with the studio, a cozy loft with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows, where Natalia shared space with 3 other freelancers. Claire, a graphic designer with a sharp wit and a penchant for gossip. Marcus, a quiet videographer who kept to himself. And Lila, Natalia's best friend since college, who used the space for her copywriting business. They interviewed each one, casually at first, probing for any hint of guilt or unease. Marcus was a dead end, his responses curt but genuine, his life too consumed by his own projects to care about Natalia's. Lila was equally baffled, her loyalty unquestionable. She'd been the first to celebrate Natalia's early successes, the first to cry with her during tough times. Claire, though, was different. Natalia had always sensed a quiet tension in her, a flicker of envy that surfaced in offhand comments about Natalia's perfect life or her charmed marriage. Claire's design business had been struggling, her clients dwindling as she took on debt to keep up appearances. New clothes, a flashy car lease, dinners she couldn't afford. When Natalia asked about the night of the call, Claire's answers were vague, her eyes darting away, her fingers fidgeting with a coffee mug. "I was home," she said, too quickly. "Working late. You know how it is." The suspicion grew, and Eric took it a step further, contacting a private investigator with a portion of the inheritance. The investigator, a gruff ex-cop named Malone, dug into Claire's finances and movements. The gas station security footage, grainy but damning, showed a woman matching Claire's build purchasing the burner phone, her face obscured by a baseball cap, but her distinctive red scarf, a gift from Natalia the previous Christmas, clearly visible. Malone uncovered more. Claire's credit card records showed purchases at the same gas station, and her phone's location data placed her near the studio the night of the call. The pieces fell into place like a grim mosaic. The confrontation was gut-wrenching. Natalia arranged to meet Claire at a quiet coffee shop, away from the studio's prying eyes. She laid out the evidence, the footage, the phone records, the scarf, her voice steady, but her heart breaking. Claire's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she buried her head in her hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she sobbed. "I overheard you talking to the lawyer about the inheritance. I was at the studio in the back, and you were on speaker. I was so angry, Nat. You have everything. Eric, your career, now this money. I'm drowning in debt, and I wanted to shake things up, make you feel what it's like to lose control." Natalia's anger battled with pity, a storm of emotions swirling in her chest. Claire's actions had been cruel, manipulative, born of envy and desperation. She'd used public records to find Ellen and Tom, a vulnerable couple whose foreclosure had been reported in a local paper, and posed as Natalia to lure them to the house, hoping to sow chaos and perhaps extort money later by posing as a helpful friend who could fix the situation. It was a clumsy, desperate plan, and it had backfired spectacularly. In the end, Natalia chose not to press charges, though the decision wasn't easy. Claire's betrayal cut deep, but sending her to jail felt like piling pain on pain. Instead, Natalia severed all ties, banning Claire from the studio and ensuring she'd never work in their shared circles again. The experience left Natalia shaken, but wiser, her perspective sharpened by the ordeal. She and Eric used part of the inheritance to help Ellen and Tom find a new home, a small apartment they could afford with a fresh start. They also donated to a local housing charity, determined to turn a cruel deception into something good. As weeks turned to months, Natalia and Eric rebuilt their trust, their bond forged anew in the crucible of the mystery. The inheritance, once a source of doubt, became a tool for good, a way to secure their future, to travel, to give back. One evening, as they sat on their porch, the lace curtains glowing softly behind them, Natalia leaned against Eric, her wineglass catching the last rays of the setting sun. "I thought I was testing you," she said quietly, her voice steady now, free of the weight it had carried. But I think I was testing myself. I needed to learn what really matters. Eric kissed her forehead, his arm warm around her shoulders, his voice a soft rumble. We passed, didn't we? He said, a smile curling his lips. Natalia laughed, the sound light and unburdened, carried away by the evening breeze. The inheritance had brought questions, but it had also brought answers, not just about Eric, but about who they were together. The future stretched out before them, uncertain but bright, a canvas of possibilities painted with trust. Their home, once a stage for deception, was theirs again, a sanctuary built not on money, but on the life they'd chosen to share no matter what came their way.